Yo, Adam Saxon with Guy in the Cube, and in this video, I want to demystify analysis services versus Power BI. Why is he even talking about this? Well, I've had a few questions about how does analysis services compare to Power BI? Hey, I want to leverage Power BI, so do I need to stand up analysis services in order to capture my data? What even happens to my analysis services models when I go to Power BI? So enough of all this talking. You know we like to do this on Guy in the Cube. Let's do what? Let's head over to my machine. So I've got Power BI desktop running and I want to look at something. I want to go to Task Manager. And if I look at Power BI desktop and I expand Power BI desktop, look at this. You see a Microsoft SQL Server Analysis Services instance as a child process of Power BI desktop. What does that even mean? I didn't even install analysis services. That's because it's a part of Power BI. When you create your Power BI data model or your Power BI data set, that is an analysis services tabular model. All right, let's go back in the way back time machine. Where's my DeLorean? Back in 1996, Microsoft acquired Panorama Software. Then they shortly after that released OLAP services as part of SQL Server 7.0. And then this was later renamed Microsoft Analysis Services as part of the SQL 2000 release. And this was multidimensional. So if you think about MDX and the old multidimensional cubes that were out there, that was analysis services. Then in 2010, there was this little Excel add-in called Power Pivot without a space. The space came later. And Power Pivot introduced this tabular model concept. This was also the introduction of DAX, so the DAX language and calculation language that you know in Power BI today. That was tied to the SQL Server 2008 R2 release, which also introduced Power Pivot for SharePoint components that you could use online with SharePoint. In 2012, the actual server product of Analysis Services Tabular was introduced, and this allowed for actual tabular models to be created from a server perspective. Again, DAX could be leveraged. So when you installed analysis services, you had the choice of multidimensional or tabular, or the Power Pivot SharePoint instance. And then in 2013, Power BI for Office 365 was introduced, and this leveraged all the Excel add-ins. So Power Pivot, Power Query, Power View. Excel was the authoring tool of that at that time. And then later in 2015, the Power BI, which you know today, was first introduced, and this leveraged Power BI Desktop, which used tabular models as part of the modeling capabilities. So tabular models are the heart of Power BI, and Power BI itself was developed from the teams that had developed reporting services and analysis services. So when we go back to look at this child process of analysis services sitting underneath Power BI Desktop, that's because when you create your data model, it is an analysis services tabular model. All right, so go back to the original question, where do these two fit in together? And the answer is, it depends. Generally, if you're starting a new project, I recommend starting with Power BI. So look at Power BI Premium. If you leverage the XMLA endpoint, you're effectively treating Power BI as an analysis services server, and the data set itself inside of Power BI is your analysis services tabular database. And so you can leverage things like Tabular Editor, Timsol, Timdol, all these things that have come out for automation that work against analysis services will work against your Power BI dataset. There's an older blog post that Christian Wade put out there about Power BI being the superset of analysis services. Think of it like you get extra capabilities with Power BI Premium that you don't necessarily get with analysis services on premises or Azure analysis services. And so when you're thinking about the two, just realize Power BI does leverage analysis services tabular models. And in fact, it brings extra things to bear when we think of certain security items, added capabilities that have come forth on the Power BI side that aren't necessarily available on the Azure analysis services side. If you like this trip down memory lane and are looking to leverage more of the capabilities of a tabular data model, check out this video that Patrick did talking about the best practice analyzer for Tabular Editor. This is something that can help you go the extra mile with your model and get the most out of it. As always, thank you so much for watching. Keep being awesome, and we'll see you in the next video.